Finding the basic posture. Head back, crown rising a little bit, counterbalancing that with a little fold forward at the hips. So I'm flexing my knees and my hips slightly forward until I start to feel the back lengthen. Long spine, the back filling out and rounding a little bit. And as that happens, I may feel like the back sort of wraps around the deep chest slightly. I don't want to use my shoulders for that. Let the shoulder blades sink down in toward the middle back. This is a change in the shape of the back itself, the spine and rib cage. Now let the tailbone drop under the body. Those upper hip bones rolling slightly backward, but without effort. The weight of the base of the spine just sinking toward the floor and the tailbone curving under a little bit. Forward even, not just from the hips, but a little bit from the ankles. So I feel like the weight's even toe to heel. Something that perhaps suggests a skiing posture. With the hands and feet spread. And also lightly cupping palms, the soles of the feet, as if the feet were grabbing the floor lightly. We want to release the weight straight down into the floor, not hold on to any excessive tension in the body. I want to feel as if the breath starts to sink and fill the abdomen automatically, just as a function of this posture. The breath feels slow and even, relaxed. Maintaining this posture as I shift a little forward and backward on my feet. So that movement feels like it just comes from the ankles. It makes a very subtle adjustment of the whole body while we still keep essentially the same posture. So I feel these tiny adjustments throughout the body as I shift the weight. Feel the feet spreading as we go forward. Feel the feet grabbing the floor lightly as we sit back. Again, something that's just spontaneous and automatic. Pause in the middle and shift the weight left and right. About 70% of the weight, really thinking of how to release the weight down through the lighter leg. So that foot stays grounded, attached to the floor, particularly of softening the hip area. The heavier side will then take care of itself for the most part. We combine those two ranges of motion, we make a little circle. Again, we can feel these subtle adjustments throughout the body. Movement comes from the ankle. But I can feel something happening up in the hip joints. Maybe up into the deep abdomen, the low back area. We use this movement to help continue to soften the low back region, release the weight, release any stiffness. Even all the way up into the neck. Pause and then reverse. Anytime we pause a movement, there's a chance to just notice how we feel, even if it's a very brief pause. Noticing how we feel after the range of motion. pause in the middle. And I'm going to look up. And as I look up, I'm going to keep the chin back slightly. Feel it lift still through the crown of the head. Looking down, the same idea. So instead of letting the chin fly up, the chin comes up slightly, but it's still drifting backward a little bit. To give me a feeling of a very even pull or light stretch down the whole front of the body. The crown never feels like it's falling down, always up away from the body, adding some sense of length to the spine. Whole trunk, even down through the hips. If I want, I can let the arms rotate a little bit. Palm forward, palm back. Not a big rotation of the shoulder. Gentle. As the chest opens, I let the palms open. As the chest is enclosed, by that shape of the back, I feel the palms also slightly enclosed. A little shape change in the hands, and I may even notice the same thing happening in the feet. So the weight now, it stays pretty even toe to heel. It's that spreading out of the feet and then the grabbing of the floor. Tailbone stays dropped under the whole time. So I'm not bringing the movement down into the low back area, not even to the waist. The waist stays stable, tailbone still dropped under, rather. I only see that movement in the upper body, but I can feel it all the way down. And so that hidden internal quality of the movement to be relaxed and spread out through every part of the body. We're still mostly talking about walking, but warming up the upper body is going to be important to fully relaxing the lower body and getting the coordination there. Same kind of movement, but side to side. Chin's a little in, the crown feels like it's still floating up away from the body. Range of motions mostly here in the neck and the upper ribs and spine. And as I side bend, do our best to relax and sink, particularly the opposite shoulder, and right down through the hip on that side. Let that whole side lengthen, open up a little bit. And we may not see outwardly the movement that's happening down through the waist area, down through the hip, but we can feel it. Circle the head, not in those ranges of motion here. It's a lot trickier to keep that sort of head back, the chin back position, at least throughout the whole range of motion. And in most of these movements, the breath should be relaxed and slow enough that it's slower than the movement. We're not making any effort to coordinate the timing of the breath and the movement. If anything, we give a little attention to letting them be independent, letting them separate so that the breath can be a little slower. As long as it's comfortable and relaxed. Pause, then reverse the direction. Do another movement. For the upper body, it's bring the shoulders forward and back. So I pull the shoulders forward and a little bit down. Relax through the middle and then back, and also a little bit down toward the center of the back. And I should be able to feel how this small movement reaches down through the trunk. And so if you can feel it in your hips a little bit, that's great. There's no movement, right, in terms of the body tipping forward and backward. I don't see any outward movement. But the long sheets of connective tissue, not just the muscular connections, but the fascia, right, forms these continuous planes that reach down the body. And so as I move the shoulders, it pulls on that whole line. Right? Or if we're thinking in terms of Chinese medicine, we think of the meridians or channels that connect the upper and lower body. And I'm going to sink one shoulder down, straight down into the body, and let the other one lightly rise up. As if one going down pushed the other up, like the two plates of a balance scale. And releasing the neck, releasing the shoulders can make a big difference for the lower body. Shrug the shoulders. And reverse. As the shoulders come up, try to keep that area around the neck as relaxed as possible. Keep the breath deep and relaxed, much slower than the movement. Now I'm going to turn the head. Working down through the spine, sort of adding little by little from the top down. With each turn, feel it move smoothly from the neck into the uppermost part of the back and chest, upper ribs, down through the middle level of the chest. And as the weight sinks, it keeps the lower body stable. So I don't feel any movement outwardly in the waist until I get down to that level. And down through the lower ribs, down through the waist. The movement's getting a little bigger. Feel it across the top of the hip bones. And then down in the hip joints themselves. So it adds a little more range of motion. Feel that twist into the upper thigh. Still sinking the weight, so that back leg is really anchored. Release and relax down through that hip. Eventually I feel the movement in the ankle as well. But the weight stays even. Both feet stay planted. I don't want to rush the movement. Keep it relaxed, but my breathing is in all likelihood still going to be much slower than the turn. I'm not going to do all the lower body warm-ups we did last time, again, so we can get to the walking. But I'm going to take a little wider step. Sit down a little deeper into the hips and knees. And notice that if I'm dropping my tailbone under, I feel that lengthening or gentle flattening of the low back. And I may also notice how the legs sort of pop out into a rounded arch. So my knees are pretty close to the instep, the center of the foot. So sinking down, right, the knees just naturally open up without having to push them apart. I'm never going to push my knees out. But at the same time, I don't want them to sag in. And that's controlled mostly up from the hip area. So that posterior pelvic tilt, doing that gentle stretch in the low back. Feel how that also helps gather the breath in the abdomen, allows a little fullness to develop there. Some sense of deep activation in the abdomen. And this makes a nice stable base. It's good alignment for the knees. And it also is going to free up the hip joint to make turning a little easier. So as I turn here, if I put my hands on the hip bones, my whole upper body just rides along on the hip bones. So my shoulders don't go any further than those hip bones. There's no twist at my waist. There's no turn up at the shoulders and neck. The head is also just riding along. So it feels like I'm steering with my belt buckle, turning to one side and the other. Again, I make a real effort to relax down through that lighter hip, or I guess in this case, the rear hip, or keeping the weight even on the 2 feet. As I turn to the side, I'm relaxing down through the leg that I'm turning away from. The side I'm turning toward will tend to take care of itself as long as that back leg is correct. Because what can happen here is that the knee can start to fall in and that whole foot roll, right? Sort of peeling the little toe up off the floor. So I want the little toe to be sinking down and stable, the heel, the little toe, the whole outside of that foot to stay connected to the floor. And I want, as I turn, to open up right from the hip crease, right at the top of the thigh, the area right below the hip bone. And keep that nice and slow. And the more I have a strong arch in the low back, and the tailbone feels like it's sticking out maybe a little bit, the harder that's going to be. The more I can drop the base of my spine toward the floor, you can see how the lower back area becomes straighter. My hip bones again are rolling back. It's going to help stabilize this arch of the legs like a base without any stiffness, without having to bear down on the muscles to try to keep the legs where they are. And it's going to allow the hip joint to stretch and open a little bit. I'm folding in toward the hip on one side, toward the upper thigh, and I'm stretching out on the other side. So one side is closing up, the other is stretching open. And so as we get to the actual Tai Chi walking patterns, this kind of movement is really essential. It's right at the heart of the walking patterns. So again, my weight staying as even as possible. I may feel some little changes in the ankle and foot, some internal movements. That's good. But I'm not going to see any external movements. I'm not going to see the knees wobbling around. I'm not going to see the foot rolling in. You really can't practice too much of this. As long as you can make it relatively comfortable, you don't feel like you're straining your joints. If you feel when you sit down in this position, little work in the thighs, that's fine. But it should be in the thicker part of the thigh, not down toward the knee. And if you can feel a little bit distributed, not just in the front of the thighs here, but in the inner thighs and in the back and the hamstring region, all the better. How do we do that? Mostly it's going to be by adjusting the low back and pelvic region. It's not something we adjust by tensing the leg muscles in a particular way or trying to do anything with their knees. So think about the relationship between your hip and your foot. That relaxing of the tailbone under the body, the relaxing of the whole hip area keeps the foot planted. Let's do a few weight shifts side to side. It's really quite similar in that, for the most part, I've maintained that round arch. Right? The leg doesn't fall in. The little toe on the lighter foot stays planted without extra effort to push it down. If I shift and turn, the challenge of keeping that back foot planted gets a little stronger. But the strategy is the same. Right? Drop the tailbone under, you can relax in through that hip. Even little things like keeping the chin a little back and the head raised, right? Relaxing and sinking the shoulders can make a real difference. So we spent a little more time talking about the shoulders today because it really can help. Again, I'm not coordinating, I'm not breathing in and out in time with the movement. I'm trying to let my breath be as relaxed and slow as it can be. So if your breathing feels like it's a slower pace than the movement, great. I can do the other arrangement where I shift the weight, but I turn back in the other direction as well. This one's maybe a little bit harder to balance out, coordinate. So here, the lighter leg, I'm turning toward it instead of away from it, but it's the same rule. I have to keep the little toe attached to the ground. So there's only 70% of my weight shifting. That leaves 30% in this lighter leg, but that 30% has to be evenly distributed. They can't roll to the inside of the foot and allow the knee to collapse. If this knee collapses, often you'll see the opposite hip swing out, and then that knee collapses as well. And I lose all my structure. When I lose this proper structure, then the weight can't travel efficiently down toward the floor, and then it's going to settle in the joints and not feel so great. Getting used to the new camera. Last week, I didn't even realize how different the view was. So it's much wider side to side, but I'm losing a little bit more of the rug. So I'm trying to figure out how I need to place the camera to keep the feet in position. And I'm also much smaller. I look a lot farther away from the camera in this case. So I'll do it facing here. I think I can take a few steps that people can still see if I start at the back. There's also this weight shifting, or rather start with the turning, where both hips open up at the same time. So this first one we were doing, one hip opens in terms of rotation, the other closes, right? It feels like it folds in. But if I let my feet pivot, now both hips are opening. I only see one leg moving. The other leg is like a post, right? It's very stable. But that hip joint is swinging open. So that if it's like a fence post and my body's the gate swings open. Here's the hinge. It's not on this side where I see the leg moving. It's the hinge is back at the post where the leg is not moving. So that's the hip I really need to give attention to. And again, as I turn my body, this leg has to be just naturally stable. I can't tense it and try to hold it in place. I mean, I can, but I wouldn't recommend it. But neither do I want to let it start to wobble and sway. So I don't want to feel like the knee is chasing me, going in the same direction, or that the hip is sticking out. So my hip stays right over my heel, my knee over my instep. So this is another foundation exercise, sort of can't put too much time into. The more you do it, the better. If you start to feel like you're getting a little sore, especially around the joints, then at least for a while, you're going to give it a break. You don't want to overdo it that way. But as long as the work feels like it's in the muscles, sometimes people's joints feel a little sore while they're doing the exercise. And sometimes the joints can feel sore after the exercise. And that's the one I would take more seriously. Right? A little soreness while you're doing the exercise, if it goes away quickly, generally not too big a problem. I still would like to make an adjustment, particularly to the pelvic tilt and that sense of the arch that connects the two legs, so that I feel it less in my joints and more in the thicker areas of the muscle. But if you notice half an hour, hour later, or later in the day that the knees are sore, that we want to be careful with. We don't want to push that too far. We want to give the body time to open up, find the right position, so I'm not getting any joint soreness or stiffness from doing it. Really, Tai Chi is supposed to help with all those things, not aggravate any problems that are already there. So here I'm just going to toe out, shift the weight, and step up. And we tried this last week. Step out again. I'm already making it more complicated. I think last week what we did was step out to the corner. Step out. So here it gives me practice at sort of opening up the hips. As I step out, both hips are actually rotating outward. Shift the weight forward about 70%. If I need to let that back foot adjust, I can let it pivot on the heel a little bit until it's at a comfortable angle. Open up the hips, shift the weight. And everything I've said about making sure the weight is still sinking through the lighter leg still pertains here. So it's a funny idea that as the weight is coming off that leg, I'm still releasing the weight that's left, right? So 30% once the weight shift is finished. So that foot still feels very firmly connected to the floor. And that's only going to happen if I can thoroughly relax the hip area, really from the whole low back down through the hip. So the little toe will stay planted, the heel will stay planted. Go back to doing that zigzag step. So I can just step up and take the next step. When I get to a place where I need to turn around, I'm just going to step the back foot forward on the heel and make a big pivot, shift the weight onto it, let the other foot pivot, and then I can continue. That way I don't have to stop. How to open up the hips. As I shift forward, how to release the weight down through that back leg. And if you feel like your knees are getting all twisted, just sort of narrow the angle of the zigzag, right? It doesn't have to be 45 degrees out to both sides. It could be a little narrower angle, right? Just make sure it's comfortable. And it should, definitely should not be more than 45 degrees to either side. So when I'm stepping out, opening up the two hips together is the main idea. When I shift forward, releasing weight through the back leg is the main idea. Very strange, seems backwards. And I just step up. Again, I'm going to step that back foot out in front, pivot on the heel, toe in. Shift the weight. The other main idea here is keeping the overall posture. That's actually the most important idea. So, including the head carriage, head back, folding forward a little from the hips, lengthening the spine, opening the back, sinking the shoulders. Also keeping the knees bent. So there's no up and down. I keep a very even height. So if my knees and hips are a little bit bent, that's basically the start of a squat. It's a very light squat, and I'm just going to keep that even the whole time. Make sure to relax your breathing, right? If you're holding your belly tight, trying to balance, or just because you're concentrating so hard, that's not going to be helpful either now or in the long run, right? You don't want to build that habit of tensing up or looking down and watching your feet. You'll notice my head staying at a pretty neutral angle. I'm looking softly into the distance. It talks a little bit about when that back leg steps up, it's a little bit behind the front foot. So it comes up, it doesn't come up so the feet are totally even. There's about 5 fingers space between them. That's about the width of one of my feet. And it comes up, it's so light that the heel doesn't even drop onto the floor. So it's just resting on the toe and ball of the foot. And it's ready for the next step. Open up the two hips. Relax and release through that rear hip. At the heavy leg, the 70% side, will take care of itself if the back leg is correct. So that's where I'm putting most of my attention. I still spent too much time on the earlier foundation exercises to have a lot of time for walking. We're already over half an hour. So this is a real challenge for me. Open up the hips. Gradual weight shift, very smooth and even, one height. As we pass the 50-50 mark, that's where I really start to give attention to releasing through the back leg. Right. And if you want to avoid having to worry about the knees and whether that back foot has to pivot, just don't step out, turn out as much to the side. Just keep the angle a little smaller so that back foot's going to be at a comfortable angle as I come forward. Right. So I can just shrink the whole angle of it and keep it simple. Because I don't want to be worried about too many moving pieces right now. As we talked about in the very first lessons, as I shift the weight, there's no sense that my body feels like it's falling forward. So you'll see in the end position, there's a little tilt to my back. Right? I'm not perfectly vertical. There's just a little bit of a tilt forward. That's fine. You'll see different people interpret this a little differently. Some people are very vertical, but even if I am, slightly forward, I don't feel any part of my body leaning. All right, so I feel like my weight goes straight down through the floor, right down through my legs. When I step up, you'll see I'm a little more vertical now. It's really as the weight shifts that I have a slight forward tilt. That will tend to happen automatically. I don't need to necessarily add it in. If anything, I want to make sure it's not too exaggerated. I don't want to. When I bend forward like this, now I feel top heavy. Now I feel like I'm falling forward. And in those first couple of lessons, we talked about the difference between Tai Chi walking and natural walking. In natural walking, there is this subtle fall that's happening. With the Tai Chi walking, we always feel the relationship of our body weight to gravity, right? It's really straight vertically down through the legs. All right, let's shake out the legs a little bit. Just bounce the legs a little bit. So here, this is coming from the ankles and knees and hips all together. It's just a light bounce. The stiffness I find in the hips or in the back, I just want to release that.